Okay, class, in this video, we're going to be working with files for Ansible. So I have 10 scripts already laid out, and we're just going to go through them. I'm already signed in as DevOps, and I'm also signed in, I'm in my working directory. So the first script uses the file module. And basically, it's going to create a blank file with no content. I'm going to set the user owner to student, the group owner to student, and I can also use the file module if the file already exists to set the permissions. So I can set them to 0755, which is no special bits. The user owner student has read write execute permission. The group owner student has read execute, and everyone else has read execute permission. So we're going to set the state to touch, meaning that the file needs to exist. So this is really used to set permission, user ownership, and group ownership. Now I added a second task on here so you don't have to exit out of Ansible, go connect to RHS2 and see if it worked. So basically what I'm going to do is run a second task using the command module. I'm going to list that directory and capture it in the output in a variable called ls. Then the last task, I'm just going to display that variable. We did it in our last video, we did debug using var. I'm going to do the same thing, but in a slightly different format so you can get used to it. Again, this is going to produce JSON data. So that JSON, the big chunk of JSON data is stored in ls. So I only want to display the standard outlines. So I'm going to open up a command prompt and run this script. So I'm going to do APS and lab 5 script 1. Make sure I have no errors. And now I'm going to execute it. Okay, so the first task was the facts gathering. The second task created the file. The third task saved all the output in a variable. Then the third task displayed that. So here's my file that I created. No special bits. Read, write, execute, read, execute, and read, execute. So this script works. So let's go look at our next script. The next one is doing the same file module, but this time instead of setting standard Unix permissions, I'm going to be setting a Samba permission, Samba share T. And then I'm going to list that directory. If I do list dash uppercase Z, it shows me the Samba, it shows me the SE Linux permissions. So the last one was Unix permission. These are setting SE Linux permissions. This is probably not the best way to do it because you can easily overwrite these permissions. There's another command that does it, but I just wanted to show you how the file module can set Unix permissions and SE Linux permissions. So this is going to list that directory. I'm going to save the output in a variable called list, and then I'm going to display that variable. Instead of showing all the JSON data, I just want to show you the standard outline. So let's go and execute this script. I'm going to first verify I have no typos. And then I'm going to execute the script, the playbook. So here I set SE Linux permissions. Here, I listed the directory and captured it in a variable called list. Here, I'm displaying that variable, but I'm only showing you the standard outlines. So that script worked fine. So with the file module, we can make sure the file exists, set the user owner, the group owner, the permissions, traditional Unix permissions, and we can also set SE Linux permissions. SE Linux stands for Security Enhanced Permissions. Very good security, don't disable it. So in our third script, we're going to copy a file. I'm going to copy a file from my control node, which is RHS1, and I'm going to copy it to RHS2. That's one task. I'm going to copy it from this machine. I have a files directory, and in that file directory, I need to create a file called copyme.txt. I'm going to copy it to the temporary directory over on RHS2. If the file exists, I'm not going to overwrite it. The default behavior is to automatically override it. I'm showing you how to make it so you don't override it. So normally force is set to yes, but here I'm overriding the default and setting it to no, to not override it. The next thing I'm going to do is use the file module to set the permissions for that file. User owner is student, group owner is student. I'm going to set it so the user owner has read-write access and the group owner has read-write access. And I want to make sure the file exists. The third task, I'm going to run the command module and I'm going to list that directory and save it in a variable called list. And then I'm going to display the output. The fifth task, I'm going to use the command module. I'm going to cat that file so I can look at the content and save it in a variable called cat. And then I'm going to display the output. The next task is I'm going to use a copy module, but this time instead of copying one file to another, a file. So here I'm copying from a file on my local machine, the control host, to a managed host in the temp directory. On the second task, I'm going to use the copy module. On the second play, I'm going to use the copy module, but instead of copying from one server to another, I'm just going to say this is the output. This is the content of the file. So I'm just adding 3 lines. Give me 1 second. Someone's at my door. Okay, I'm back. So this is going to copy a file. But now if I don't put this pipe right here, what happens is it creates one big long line. By putting the pipe there, it creates 3 separate lines. So instead of copying from my control host to a remote machine, I'm going to use the copy command to add some content to a file called temp copy me to. Again, the second task sets the user owner permission, group owner, and the security permissions. Third task will list that directory, save it in a variable. Fourth task will show me the output. These 3 tasks right here, these 4 tasks right here, are just so I don't have to connect to the machine to verify everything worked. So this will list the directory, display it, cat the directory, display it. Cat the file and display it. Now the third task is instead of doing a pipe like I did right here, I'm going to do the same task, but this time I'm going to create a file called copyme3, but I'm going to use the list items. And I want to show you what happens when I use that list item format as opposed to that pipe right after content. Again, just displaying the output, and let's run this script. So I'm going to check if the script had any typos. Now I'm going to execute the script. So why did I get an error here? It's because I'm missing the file. So if I do a list on my current directory, I can see I have a files folder. If I list inside of that folder, I don't have a copy me file. So I can't copy a file from this machine to the other machine if it doesn't exist locally. So I need to echo I'm going to echo some content into copyme.txt. So now if I list files, I can see I have that file. If I cat that file, the original content of copy me. So now let's run our script again. Okay, so we're going to go back to our first play. Okay, our first play, it's going to copy me from my local machine, which is the control host, to a managed machine, which is RHS2. And I can see it successfully copied that file. And these rest of these tasks will show me the content of the file. So you can see that it has content. Now the next task, the next play, instead of copying one file to another, it just copied these 3 lines into a file called copyme2 on the other machine, and it's set the permissions and user owner. So let's look at that output. So here it copied the file, set the permissions, set the user owner, set the group owner, captured all that data in a variable, then displayed the variable, and now I can see I have a file called copyme2, read write permission, and if I go further down, there's the content of the file. Now remember, in this option, I had the pipe. In this play, I had the pipe. So I'm going to show you what it looks like if I Here's a third play. This is without the pipe. Um, this uses a list format. I'm going to go back to the play. So instead of having that pipe right here after content, I had it set up as a list. So when I have it set up as a list, it comes out to one long line. And there's how it looks in the list. Okay, so that is playbook number 3. So let's look at playbook number 4. Okay, so with this copy module, I was able to copy a file from the control host to a remote machine, a managed host. Now with the fetch module, it does the reverse. It allows me to go to a machine, grab a file, and copy it back to the control host. Guys, we're going to pretend RHS1 is a different machine. So I'm going to go out to RHS1, which happens to be the same machine that I'm on, grab my public SSH key, and copy it to the files directory. Now, I don't need to create keys or anything like that. It'll automatically create a subdirectory called keys and put all that um, information in that directory. So it's going to go out, grab a key for the DevOps user. So it's going to go to the remote machine, go to the home directory, go to the DevOps directory, go to the .ssh directory and grab this key called, it's a file actually, id_rsa.pub. Then copy it to the local files directory. Then once I have it copied, I'm going to send that key out so I can use it to sign into other machines. So on RHS2, I have a student account. I want to associate my public key from DevOps to the student account, the DevOps that's on this machine, to the student account, because that's where I got the key from, to the student account on RHS1. So basically, I want to be able to sign in. I'm DevOps on RHS1. I want to be able to sign in to student on RHS2 without um, having to supply a password. So I have a variable set for student. SSH keys are very particular. If they don't have the proper permissions, or the directory that a key is stored in doesn't have the proper permissions, meaning that other people can read that directory, then it won't trust the keys. So I'm going to let this authorized key module manage the directories for me. So what I want this to do is take my SSH key for DevOps user and go add it to the student account on RHS2. So this is the user account that I'm going to connect to on the remote machine, but the key field actually requires me to paste my key right here. It means it wants me to open up this file, take the contents of the file, and put it right here, which will be too much work. So we have this lookup plugin that allows us to go out and look in a file, grab the contents of the file, and paste it here. So we're going to run this script. So the fetch module will go to another machine, grab a file, and copy it locally. Then the authorized key module will take a local key and integrate it on some other user account so I can sign in with that user account without having to supply a password. So let's run this script. So APS lab 5 script 4, no errors. So it grabbed the key from another machine, which happens to be the same machine I'm on. It went out to RHS1, grabbed a key from the DevOps directory. This is the key that I grabbed. Cat, home, DevOps, SSH. It grabbed this key, copied the whole file, put it inside of files, keys, or DevOps pub. This is the directory structure that was automatically created for me. I just specified the DevOps. It created all this other stuff afterwards. Sorry. So I specified files, keys, then the DevOps user account. So it says DevOps public. It created the host that I grabbed the key from and the home direct in the directories where it found that key. So if I look at our script, so all I specified was files, keys, devops.pub. The reason why I wanted to use a variable here so I don't have to type DevOps twice. So if I need to change this to a different user, I can just come in here and just change this one name and it'll affect all of those. So I just created in the files directory, created a keys directory, then created DevOps.pub directory, then everything after that was automatically created. So then it connected to RHS2 and copied my key over. So right now I am signed in as DevOps on RHS1. That's where we got the key from. So I'm going to do SSH student at rhs2.contoso.com. So my key worked. It didn't prompt me for a password. So I associated my public key with the student account on the other machine. Let's go into, so if you're provisioning a new machine, what you can do is integrate all your keys when you deploy that new machine. So all your keys for DevOps are on those other machines as they get deployed. So in this one, we use the fetch module to grab the key. I don't know why it keeps doing that. And the authorized key module to deploy the key. So let's look at script 5. Now, with the script 5, I'm using the line in file module. So basically, all this module does, it adds a line to the bottom of the file. So what I'm going to do is go to RHS2, and on the bottom of the etc ssh ssd underscore config file, I'm going to add allows group, allow groups will. So basically, if you're not a member of the will group, you're not allowed to use SSH. So I'm limiting the will group to be the only group that can SSH into this box. After I change the configuration file for the SSH server, I need to restart that service. The next thing I'm going to do, using the command module, I did the service module to restart the service. Now on the command module, I'm just going to cat the file to verify my change has taken place. I'm going to save the output in a variable called cat. And then I'm going to use debug message to display that variable. So let's run this script. So I'm going to do APS, lab 5, script 5, no typos. Now I'm going to execute it. So this is just the content of the file. Again, it's a big chunk of data. It doesn't look very well formatted. But if you notice, at the very end of the file, I have a new line called allow groups will. So now if I try to SSH as student, it's going to prompt me for the password. Even though I'm DevOps, I already have my key working because it tried the key, it failed. Now it's trying the password. It's going to keep failing no matter how many times I test it because student isn't part of the wheel group. So I'm going to SSH as DevOps now. I don't need to say DevOps because I'm signed in as DevOps here. So I'm just going to type RHS2 contoso.com. I can go in no problem. If I do ID student, I can see student user ID, student's primary group, and student is a member of this group. Student is not a member of the wheel group, so student isn't allowed to SSH. If I do gpassword dash uppercase A, and then the wheel group, I have to sudo it. Now I do the ID student. I did that wrong. Um, I don't know why that didn't work. Okay, sorry, I had the wrong command. I was using an uppercase A, not a lowercase a. So this command, gpassword, allows me to add a user to a group. I want to add student to will. So now if I do ID student, I can see that student is a member of the will group. So I'm going to exit out of here. So I'm back at RHS1. I'm going to do SSH student at RH. Now I can sign in no problem because I'm a member of the wheel group. So our next script is so in script 5, line in file, it allows you to add one line. Block in file allows you to add multiple lines. So just to mix things up a little bit, I created a variable called files and I specified the file. So here I'm using that variable. And then that blocking file module has a line of code, has a parameter called block, and I used a pipe because I'm adding multiple lines. I don't want it to come as a multiple, one big line. I want it to be four separate lines. And then here I'm just catting the file, saving it in a variable, and here I'm displaying the output. Now I'm doing this to show you what would happen if I try to add a block of text to a file that doesn't happen. Excuse me, for a file that doesn't exist. So the only thing I'm doing between this task and the task up there is it's going to show me an error because this file doesn't exist. So I can't add a block of lines to a file that doesn't exist. So if you wanted to do something like this, you would have to use the file module to make sure the file exists before you do um, add text to it. So if the file doesn't exist, you'll just get an error. And again, I'm just trying to show you that it doesn't exist. So the blocking file module just adds multiple lines to the file. So let's run this. And one other thing I wanted to point out is, again, you need to make sure you put that pipe character, which is above your enter key. You have to press shift then that key to get that pipe. That's what it's called. I'm going to make sure there's no typo. Then I'm going to execute it. Okay, so this is the first play where I add a block of line to a file that doesn't exist. That does exist. So here's my original copy me file, the original content of copy me. And then this is the block that was added by Ansible. Adding a line, this is a new line, adding yet another line. Okay, this is the last line. So that's what I added. So when I try to do it to a file that doesn't exist, copy me 4, it gives me a failure. So the file needs to exist. The return code, incidentally, was 257. Let's go to our next script. Guys, I'm not going to actually run this, but this just deletes the file. I'm using the file module, and I just changed the state to absent. I don't have the full module here. I don't have a full playbook. I'm just giving you just the task. Self-explanatory. So you don't have to create script 7. So in this one, I'm going to get the checksum of a file. Just check the status. The module is called stat. So basically, guys, a checksum is kind of important because let's say I put a file on a server and I run the checksum and I add the checksum to another file so you can see the checksum. Then you go and download the file and you run the checksum. If you don't get the same checksum as that I got, the file has been altered or encrypted. So it just lets you know if that file has been changed. So that's what the checksum is used for. The algorithm we're using is MD5, but they also support SHA. So basically, I'm going to, I gave this play a name. That's the host we're working on. I created a variable called path and put our file name in there. And here's my task. I'm going to use the stats module, supply the path temp, copy me.txt, It's going to run the checksum. It's going to save the results in a variable called result. And then I'm going to print that. First, I'm going to do result.stat.checksum just to show you that little piece of data that we want. I'm also going to show you the full results of the whole JSON data. This you want to avoid. If you only want to look at one particular thing, you're going to have to run this once, examine the output so you know what to grab. All I want to do is grab, it's a JSON data. Under result, that's my variable name. Look for something called stat, then under stat, look for checksum. So we're going to execute this. Again, this is going to give you way too much information. If that's all you want to see is the checksum, show only the checksum. So this is script 8. I'm going to verify I have no typos, and then execute it. Okay, this is the first part where I only display the checksum. If that's all you want, just display the field you want. Otherwise, I would have to go to look through all this. There's stats. Then under stats, checksum. Do you remember in our JSON data, this would be equivalent to stats and checksum would be right here. In this particular JSON output, I only have one sub item. So there's stats, and underneath it is checksum. Let's go back to our script. That's my chunk of data. That's a variable name. It has nothing to do with the actual chunk of data. In that variable, there's a chunk of data. Look for stats, then checksum. Otherwise, I just displayed the whole chunk of data here. Guys, I'm going to use my scroll button to scroll up here. If you hover over this field or the top bar, then use your scroll button. It'll allow you to scroll back and forth. So I'm going to go to script 9. Okay, this wasn't in the book, but I felt it was important. So I showed you how to add, to create a file, a blank one. I showed you how to copy a file from the controlled host to a managed host. I showed you how to grab a file off a managed host and copy back to the control host. I showed you how to add one line to a file. I showed you how to add multiple lines to a file. So in this module, I'm going to show you how to modify a file. So guys, this is a little bit different than what I had in my demo lab, so I'm going to change this. Okay, so basically I have a play here, and the task that I'm going to do is just show you the content of the file first. I just want you to see what it currently is. I run a command called cat, capture the output and save it in a variable called cat. Then I display that output. Now, the next module is the replace module. So I'm going to say go to this file, look for the word original, and change it to change. Guys, you can get very elaborate and have very elaborate regular expressions here. I'm just trying to keep it simple. Look for the word original and change it to change. Then what I'm going to do is redisplay that file. So you can see what it is before the replace module is run and then after the replace module is run. So I'm going to save this. Guys, I'm changing original to changed. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to verify that the file has no typos. My script has no typos. Then I'm going to execute it. The original content of the copy me. Then here's my added blocks. Then after that task where I do the replace module, it now reads the change content of the copy me. Then our added lines. So I showed you how to create a blank file, how to copy from the controlled host to the managed host, how to copy from a managed host to the control host, how to add a line, how to add a block of text. Now I'm showing you how to change text. Okay, so our last script, synchronize. We're going to be using the synchronize module. So basically, let's say I had a file in the control host that I deployed to a bunch of machines. So I can make one change on the control host file and then redeploy that change to all the other machines. So basically, I'm just synchronizing a file. If you've ever used something called rsync in Linux, you'll understand what that does. So basically, whenever I make a change on the original file, it'll copy it over to all the hosts that I have it copied to. If there was no change, it won't do anything. So that's what rsync does. So if the file is the same on the control host as the manage host, it won't actually make a change. So in this, basically what I'm going to do is synchronize this file on my control host to the file under temp on RHS2. Again, I'm just setting the permissions and all that, if those have changed, listing the directory, um, displaying that list, catting the file, and displaying that output. So just to show you right now, this is how copy me looks on RHS2. So I'm going to double check there's no typos on script 10. And then execute script 10. So here's the file. The permissions are all right. The user owner and the group owner is right. But now look at the content. It's back to the original state the file was in. That's what I have in my original file. If I make any changes to this, like echo a new line, I'm going to append it to my current file. I'm on RHS1. I'm going to cat that file again. So you can see that I made a new line on the local file. So if I re-execute this script, I now have the new line. So This way you only have to maintain one copy of the file on your control host. Every time you make a change, you can sync that out to all of your managed hosts. Okay, guys, this is the last script. There was a lot of scripts in this, a total of 10 scripts in this lab. It was a big chapter, but keep in mind, guys, is on everything on a Linux box is a file. So it makes sense that this was a big chapter. Let me sign in. So here's the lab that you have to do. I want you to use the WinCopy module. So far, everything I've done was on a Linux box. And I want you to create a file on your C drive called ididit.txt. And in that file, I want you to have this phrase. There's multiple ways you can do it. You could copy it, you can edit it, whatever you want to do. I want to see what solution you come up with. So that's your lab. Uh, Guys, it's midterm this week. And so far, we're on lab 5. We only have 3 more labs left to do. So there's light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, class, I will see you on Wednesday. Thank you.